Is this the microphone we're using?
Yeah, is that light on?
It is?
Test, test. All right, I think we'll get started. Can everyone hear me? Welcome, everyone. My name is Steve Jamison. I am the publisher here at the Free Press. This is the second of our sort of lecture series that we're going to do monthly based on different topics. If you have topics you'd like to hear or learn about, send a note to Joe or myself. We do this for two reasons. We have this nice big building and not a lot of people come and visit us, so it's nice to bring people in here to visit. And we like to sort of educate people. You know, we write stories. That's what we do. So it's kind of nice to bring people in and educate people that way. So I'll shut up now and introduce Joe Spear, our editor, who's going to introduce our guest.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Spear. On. How about this? Closer? All right. You really got to be kind of like a rock star here and get really close to that microphone. Yeah. So thank you for coming. Great turnout. We're really excited to have this presentation tonight. As Steve said, this is something new the Free Press is doing. We're just holding the events on topics of the day. It's called Knowledge and Lecture Series to hopefully expand everybody's knowledge and get us talking, you know, of course, in civil ways. We want to promote that. And we also want to reach out to our readers and know there's more that you can get from your newspaper other than just subscribing, although we would love to have you do that. And anybody who hasn't subscribed, you feel like you can give us your name tonight. And we will set you up. But I'm going to introduce our speaker now. She is Kristen Cvancara, which you would never get from looking at the spelling, but she informed me. She is she's going to talk about political polarization and how to become a braver angel. She is communications and media professor and a volunteer ambassador with the Braver Angels, a nonprofit started after the 2016 election with the aim of reducing polarization. Workshops offered by the organization range from evenly divided discussion groups to how to talk about politics with family members and social media skills. Besides teaching and research, Kristen works on campus and the community encompasses her interests in leadership and social influence. She has worked with the MinSU Leadership Institute since it launched in 2005, enabling faculty, staff, administrators, facility managers to improve their effectiveness and efficiency in a variety of positions. She's trained as an Interactivity Foundation coach to facilitate small and large group discussion to advance democracy and bring communities together through conversation. Let's welcome Kristen.
Thank you, Joe. Can everybody hear me? Is this coming across? Okay, wonderful. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I do appreciate you being here. I understand that we have roughly about an hour, and I will be talking for roughly about a half an hour. And I'm going to be using slides, and I will move fairly quickly, and then we will have some time for discussion. So right away, I'm going to have you just turn to the person you're sitting next to. And we have just a really, really short little activity to get you talking. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to talk about your favorite thing to eat at Thanksgiving. Now, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you talk about one thing that you can find in common with the person sitting next to you and one thing that you disagree on. I'll give you a minute. Go ahead. Okay, everybody, if I can have you come on back to the larger group. I love this part of teaching. This is where I have to really work to try and get your attention back. How many of you were able to find something in common? Don't worry, I'll wait for everybody to catch up. How many of you were able to find something in common? In common. Okay. How many of you were able to find something you disagreed on? Awesome. Okay, everybody, keep that feeling in your heart, all right? The agenda tonight is we want to do this kind of experiential activity that gets us all talking to each other, whether we know each other, whether we don't know each other, because we are in community with each other. We're going to talk a little bit with you about the Braver Angels way, the Braver Angels impact and ways that you can make a difference. So this activity is an example of one that we use in our Braver Angel workshops, that we talk about our inner polarizer. Now what we do is there is a series of questions up here, and it's okay if you can't see them, I'm going to read them to you. But what I want you to think about is the conversation you just had, that feeling that you had in that conversation. I want you to compare that to conversations that you feel that you might have with somebody that you may disagree with politics on. Okay? Compare that in your mind. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions. How often do you find yourself thinking about those people on the other political side without much regard for the variation among them? Now, usually we're really aware of great variation within our own group. Now, how often do you think about them as just lumping them all in one group? Often, sometimes, never. Question 2. How often do you find yourself assigning mainly self-serving or negative motives to the other group and mainly positive motives to your own group? Often, sometimes, never. 3. How often do you find yourself focusing on the most extreme or outrageous ideas and people on the other side, thereby making it hard to see how a reasonable person could remain in that group? Often, sometimes, never. How often do you find yourself comparing the worst people on the other side with the best people on your own side? How often do you feel a rush of pleasure when you're with friends and you can ridicule those crazies on the other political side, right? That feeling of unity. So which of the following is closest to your overall emotional attitude towards the majority of the people who support the other side? Now, what we would typically do is, this is an exercise that we would have individuals in a workshop sit down, they'd have a survey, they would circle how they feel, then we would have them identify where they might be on this arc. Now, I'm going to try and explain it to you. I realize it's really hard to see. On this end, we have hatred. We see these people as enemies, and we think that they want to harm our country. Further along, you move to disdain. They're deplorable people. They're ignorant, and they should know better. As we move along our arc, this is the direction that Braver Angels try to encourage our community members to move. When we move along to the middle of the arc, pity. They've been duped. Well-meaning, but fooled. We want to keep moving you to the point where there's basic respect. Oh, they have something to contribute. There's some valid points. Maybe their overall perspective is flawed. All the way to the very, very other side, where it's respect and appreciation. They have something to offer us. We just need to seek better understanding. This is the kind of exercise and activity that Braver Angels would do. Now, if we were in a workshop and we had more time, I would typically then have you go back to your partner, and I wouldn't have you necessarily have to tell the partner how you responded to each of the questions, because, that might be kind of hard. But I would have you consider, how did it feel to go through and answer those questions? What did you hold in your heart? What kind of feelings were you holding on to? Because that's the kind of self-observation that we want to bring to the surface. We want to help people understand. So you know what? Our country is in a crisis of polarization. It's not just a red-blue, and what we do in Braver Angels, we talk about blue as in the blue leaning, red as in the Republican, the red leaning. It's not only about the blue and the red differences in politics. What we realize is that this polarization is affective, meaning it's about our emotions. We're to the point now where some of us can't even look at certain political figures. We can't even talk to people in our communities because we think that they are just crazy. So the whole point of what Braver Angels is about is trying to identify these reactions in us. How is it that we have come to a place where we feel animosity and contempt and distrust of our own community members? The main theme that Braver Angels wants to bring across is that we have way more in common than what the political narratives want us to believe. How many of you are worried about, and this might be a very personal question, so you can think about it rhetorically, or if you choose, you can raise your hand. But how many of you are kind of worried about going to a holiday gathering and you might bump into friends or family that you're not really sure how you're going to be able to talk to them? So, you know what? That's real. And the idea is that we don't need to carry that animosity around if we can feel more comfortable in how we can respect and try to understand each other with curiosity. So this is just a statistic to look at how people have shifted. In 1960s, how much did it matter if your child married somebody of a different political persuasion? Compared to 2018, and now this is getting old, but you can see that 35 to 45% of Republicans red, Democrats blue, are really worried that their children will marry outside of their political party affiliation. We have way more in common than we think we do. The political narratives like to draw our attention to the extreme sides. But most of us aren't just the poster child for the extreme. We have much more in common that we want to be able to talk about, that we have to be able to get to problem solve. But that means that we're going to have to be able to bridge that divide. We have to be able to sit down with those people that we might feel some animosity toward, that we think that, gosh, they've got to be crazy. No, we have to recognize that they are probably motivated by fears and worries and concerns that we all harbor in our heart. So the conversation will go much further if we are willing to focus on identifying, what are we all fearful of? What is it that we all hope for? Braver Angels is trying to bridge this partisan divide. So our pledge. We try to understand the other side's point of view. We engage those that we disagree with. We look for common ground before we look for where we differ. The red and blue leaders are equally represented. Braver Angels is not religiously affiliated. It is a non-profit, non-partisan organization that truly is about bringing communities together. We are not about trying to change anybody's mind. I don't care what your political views are. I just want to enable all of us to be able to look across the table with each other and to have curiosity in our hearts instead of that animosity. We strive to be an organization that reflects the country that we seek to serve. Now, the core values of Braver Angels, it is all about respect, humility, honesty, and that responsible citizenship. Tonight, I am here not because of any professional experience that I have. I am here because I am with you. I am a citizen. I am a sister. I am a daughter. I am a wife. I'm a friend. And what we want to do with Braver Angels is we want to shift our focus from the extremes to recognizing the humanity that we all have. We are building a house united. So let's tell you a little bit about our story, who Braver Angels is, and how it started. Two of the founders, there are three co-founders. Two of them you will see in the picture there. One is Bill Doherty. He is a university professor up at the University of Minnesota, and he has been a family marriage therapist for a number of decades. So Bill is at the heart of a lot of the curriculum that we bring into communities. It is about negotiation, it is about respect, it is about building empathy and understanding, not changing your mind. And oftentimes people might be put off. We were talking, Joe and I were talking earlier before the event, and we kind of were laughing about how sometimes like this political conversation is like a hot potato. And everybody's worried that like somebody's going to toss it to them and they're going to have to hold it in the middle of a group, and what do they do with it? But the idea is that we're more than that. We can talk with each other. We can try to understand each other. So what Bill did with David Blackenhorn and another co-founder, after the election in 2016, they got a group of people together. It was equal reds and blues, and they sat down for a weekend. And what they did was they sat down and they talked about what they were feeling, what was going on after that 2016 election. So you know what? They did that first red-blue workshop, and then somebody heard about it. And suddenly they were in a bus, and they were staying in people's homes, and they were going around the United States because everybody was hearing about the power of this ability to bring people together to talk. It's structured. And we find again and again, people aren't nasty or rude because we come together trying to see each other's humanity. So in 2017, they started to get more and more requests. 2018, 2019, they actually started to build this nonprofit as an organization, which is now nationwide. There are thousands of members across the United States. There are alliances. We call them, instead of chapters or divisions, we call them alliances. There are 6 alliances in Minnesota alone. These people, all of us, we are about going into communities just like Mankato and trying to encourage the community to realize the power they have in talking to each other. There was explosive growth in 2020, and it has taken off, and we have had more and more members ever since. So what are the results? So let me just be clear. What happens is you can sign up for a workshop. A local organization, a local group might ask, hey, could you come and talk to us? Could you do a workshop for our group? And I'll show you a couple of minutes later now in a couple of slides what those workshops look like. But basically, we will go in, we will moderate a workshop for about an hour and a half. Maybe some of them are 2 hours, maybe some are 2.5 hours. What are the results of people who actually go to our workshops? We really do a good job of reducing that affective polarization. 70 to 80% of people who participate say they have a better understanding. They have increased positive attitudes. They can see their neighbors more for their humanity instead of just seeing them as that crazy person that they can't even talk to. So what's the impact of the red-blue workshops? 85% feel less estranged or angry. 87% gain significant understanding. We think we know. Well, we know what that other side thinks. Do we? Do we lump them all into one big group? Do we act as if they vote one way, that means that they buy into every single thing that goes along with that vote? 91% see areas of commonality. It is what we have in common that will pull us together. When we see how much we have the same desires and fears and hopes, that is what will bring us to the Thanksgiving table and to our conversations and to problem solving, how we know we can. The goal is not to change anybody's views. I don't care what your view is. We are all about helping people just be able to talk to each other and collaborate, to problem solve, to be able to understand what's most important to you, what drives you, what are you fearful of that would prompt you to vote that way? How could we reflect that better in our community? We're likely going to both have to give a little bit. We know how to do that. We just need to be able to talk through what that would look like in the best situation. We're about finding commonalities. We're about seeing people on the other side as individuals, not stereotypes. We want to recognize others as worthy of respect and admiration. I absolutely believe that we all have something to contribute and give. We have to be willing to see what that person across from us can give us. We have to be curious. We have to be open to allow the space for that to actually happen. We want to establish ways to work together and even become friends. Or maybe to rebuild those friendships that we might have lost over the past 10 years. A good national union, that equals good relationships, right? We give respect, we get respect. That's powerful. The disagreements, they can be turned into more respect and warmth. We can find out that actually works. So, how can you make a difference? I'm actually here tonight to represent a movement. Not a movement of somebody else, of big political leaders, although political leaders are involved. I'm here to express a movement that every single one of us, as citizens, as friends, as community members, can embrace. We have these skills. We have these abilities. So there are a couple of different ways that Braver Angels would like to enable us to do that. Now, of course, you can join or donate. It's $1 a month to be able to have access to all of the materials that Braver Angels has online and in a number of different ways. So let me tell you a little bit about them. I want to show you how you can get involved. Not everybody wants to be involved in the same way. That's okay. That's all right. We don't expect that everybody would want to. Maybe you just want to learn. Maybe you actually want to volunteer. To join or donate, you can sign up online. I'll have a QR code for you. You can go just search Braver Angels if you want to be able to join. You can get involved in a local alliance. You don't have to get involved in a local alliance. You can just join because you want to be able to read things. God bless you. Ways that you can get involved. There are a number of programs that Braver Angels opens up to the public. We have something called Braver Campuses. That's where we have knowledge and space available. We have Braver Citizens. These are groups that will actually hold different kinds of events. Braver Media. There's a whole bunch of media that's available. Now remember, it's not media trying to tell you, you should think this way, you should do that. No, it's media that helps you to understand where people are at and how we can build those relationships with each other. The Braver Network. There is a network across the United States. It's even starting to go international now because of the power of what we can do with each other in our coffee shops, at our school board meetings, in our churches, across the mailbox with our neighbors. Braver Politics is a program that has specifically looked at engaging with people who hold office, public servants, who actually go through the Braver Angel workshops so that they hold this mentality in their head so that they're aware, how might I be polarizing when I really want to be in my tribe and I really just want to talk about how crazy those people are. It talks about how we can try to understand by being curious and how that can influence our political landscape right now. Braver You is about, again, disseminating more information out. Maybe you just are like, I don't really know about this. I don't really know what I want to do. I'm not quite sure. This is a lot of information. So another thing, there are e-courses. You could sit in the comfort of your jammies at home on your computer, and you could watch a webinar for an hour and a half. There are e-courses that you can do. There are workshops. Typically, we hold our workshops in person, but the pandemic has taught all of us that we can do our workshops on Zoom. It allows us to contact and connect with a lot of other people. Debates. Now, there are debates that Braver Angels will hold that are very, very structured. There are equal representation of those who lean red, those who lean blue. The debates will take an issue, they will then talk through, and there will be rebuttals, and there will be very civil understanding and civil conversation in the debate. It's just about learning more about what the other side is thinking. The one-to-one conversations, I love these. You could choose to sign up for a one-to-one conversation with somebody who's not in your community, who might be in a different state, and they might have the opposite political leaning to you. And we have a protocol, like a list that you can go through that has a very structured conversation where you can actually talk to that individual and you can learn from them. You can understand why it is they hold the positions that they do. What is it that motivates them in the ways? What are the fears? What are those hopes? The conversations are awesome. And I have had so many people tell me just their testimonials about how they can't believe what they've learned and how they've made a new friend. Caucuses. There's so many things that you can do. You don't have to be me. You don't have to do the workshops, but you can. And what I find is that the more people feel empowered by the skills that you gain, the more you want to learn, the more you want to engage. Let me tell you about a couple of our standard workshops. You might be thinking, well, Kristen, what does this look like for me? Well, for example, there's a red-blue engagement workshop. That's what was kind of talked about earlier, what started off the whole organization. And that's where we have equal people who hold red-leaning and blue-leaning political views, and they work through a very structured conversation where they work with people that they have similar political views with, then they work with people that have conversation with people on the other side. A different kind of workshop is called depolarizing within. So that little activity that we did earlier where we had to really think about how do I personally think about the other side? That's about depolarizing from within. So that workshop is all about ourselves, about really trying to look at How do I talk about the other side? What do I assume about them before I actually really engage with them? Depolarizing from within is all about self-change. The next one is called disagreeing better. So all of these are skill-building workshops. What we do is we have a very simple, straightforward set of skills. We explain you through the skills and how you can communicate. It offers you a semi-structure. You can practice that. We go through activities within the workshop. Then you get to go home with friends, with people, with family, and you get to try and work with those skills. The beauty is when you actually come to a workshop with a friend who might be on that other side, and then you both get to learn the skills together. So skills, disagreeing better, is all about disagreeing and having a conversation with that person that you think is over there, the other. And it's all about recognizing how can we listen, acknowledge that I've heard you. Have I heard you correctly? Do I understand that this is what you're thinking? And when you have that connection, that affirmation with each other, that trust that you've just built, instead of just calling them crazy, you pivot. And you say, wow, I've been thinking about that too. Could I tell you what I'm thinking about that and how it lands with me? So all of these are skill-building workshops. They are simple, straightforward, effective. This is heavily coming out of Bill Doherty's work for decades in helping families and marriages through counseling. They're tried and true. We have other kinds of workshops too. Common ground is where we actually take an issue and a group of people, again, this is one where we have equal red and blue leaning folks. They come together and they agree that they want to talk about a specific issue. And then there's a structured way that you can work through that information. Families and politics has become very, very important. The height and intensity of the past election has once again thrown families and relationships into a tizzy. That's tough stuff, especially when it's the people that we love and we disagree with them. So there's a specific workshop for families and politics where we go through and we talk about what are some of the roles that we tend to take on. How does that play out in the dynamic of our families? So this isn't a counseling session. I don't want you to think that, oh, I'm going to go to this, 2-hour session and I'm going to walk out and it'll all be better. No, we know that's not real. But what we do is we talk you through a way to help you recognize what are some of the roles that my family members are taking when they communicate with me. And how do I respond? And then it's about what role might I be taking? How can I address what I'm doing? Folks, we will never be able to control somebody else. I don't care how much you love them. I don't care how much you plead with them. I don't care how much you argue with them. What we can do is we can control ourselves and how we communicate. That is your power. And that means that we have to carry the burden of trying to be the person who opens with curiosity and tries to understand those other people. Public policy and race. There's other workshops that are very specifically focused on specific topics. This past June, the Braver Angels held a national conference in Kenosha. I didn't get to go. I was so bummed. You know why I didn't get to go? Because I couldn't find an other-leaning partner that would join me at the conference. So it is so entrenched in the mission and philosophy of this organization that it constantly reinforces not just red or blue leaning, all sides. Sometimes the people who are more independent or in the middle refer to themselves as purples. Sometimes we have greens, a whole bunch of colors, right? But the idea is that at this amazing conference that was held in Kenosha, which was purposely located in regions that would be close to where the Republican National Conference and the Democratic National Conferences were going to be held. They brought people together, reds, blues, purples, and they had this amazing conference. And they decided that the new push, the new campaign that Braver Angels wants to bring to communities is American hope. We can hold hope in our hearts. We have hope in our hearts. We all want to hope for the best. We don't have to do that alone. We don't have to be isolated. We don't have to isolate ourselves from those that we think we might disagree with. You can sign our petition. You can attend a Common Ground workshop. You can share our messages at the polls. There are a whole bunch of ways that you can embrace this notion of American hope. What we want to do is we want to start a movement. We want to reclaim the fact that America does not need to be divided. We do not need to be polarized. We need this now more than ever. We can do this. I'm not saying it's easy. I have been a communications professor for over 20 years. I've worked with people, and what I study personally is hurtful communication. I understand the pain and how hard it can be to get over that curb and try to offer somebody else the benefit of the doubt. But there's so much power in it. There's so much opportunity for something different, something new, something better to happen. We can do it. We need each other to do it, though. We can't do it alone. We need our communities, our friends, our families. We need to do it together. If you want to help make a difference, I encourage you to talk with me, to go on a website, look up Braver Angels. You can scan the QR code for a couple of tips if you want to bring home tonight. But my talk to you here is I want to bring you opportunity. I want to bring you a sense of there's work we can do here. We can do it together. And Braver Angels wants to be a part of it. And if we can help you, you can come to a workshop. Maybe it only takes one. And that's the spark that helps you to be able to talk with your brother or your child or your neighbor. Braver Angels has been heavily rooted in the work of Abraham Lincoln. And he is known to have said a most amazing quote. I do not like that man. I must get to know him better. This is what I want to leave you with tonight. I want you to be thinking about how we can work to get to know each other better and how good that can feel. I'm done, everybody. Let's open this up for conversation, and I'm curious of any questions or if anybody would like to know more.
So we're recording this tonight, so that's why we want to use this microphone. So just raise your hand, and I'll bring the microphone to you. Any questions?
So I was trying to talk with a friend to come tonight, and she's in a group that feels very vulnerable currently, given the political situation and future. So for those people who really are afraid of what's going to happen to them, do you have some hope for them? Like how, like she is like, I'm not talking to anybody who's taking my rights away. How do you approach that?
One question, and I'm going to try and do this again. I'm going to try and keep illustrating and modeling this. How would you want to be treated if that's how you felt? If you really felt that way, what would enable you to step out of what you feel is your safest space and to step into a conversation with somebody? I don't know what it will be for that individual or other individuals that feel that way. But I do know that when somebody reaches out with kindness and curiosity, that helps a lot. And when we try to acknowledge, first of all, truly acknowledge, even if you don't agree with their position, they're hurting, they're scared. What are they scared of? Maybe it's something that you're kind of scared of too. So one of the biggest skills that we teach with Braver Angels is this notion of listening and acknowledging. It's one of the strongest gifts that we can give each other. To listen and acknowledge so they feel heard, recognized. It's the first thing you have to do to establish trust. Why would anybody even begin to reach out to you if they don't feel trust and safety? I'm not sure what will bring your friend out, but I do think that encouraging them that there might be spaces and people who would be willing to engage with them. It's really important that we recognize everybody's on their own path here, in the sense of how they feel, how threatened they feel, how elated and happy they feel, how relieved they are with how the election has gone, and how they think like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing that could happen. If you do feel that way, then maybe try to just think about, well, okay, there are people who are also really sad and scared.
You're just going to yell at us?
Yeah, well, no, I can speak louder. I appreciate your group, but one thing you haven't mentioned, we're all Americans. And then the other thing, and Joe and I don't there's a little bit of disagreement on this. The media always says Black Americans, Indian Americans. We're all Americans. Forget that word. And like when the Mexicans asked me, what do you think of Mexicans? I said, your blood is red, just like mine. But if you don't add that word to America, now there's one other item that comes out of place. I do not like the way the media says educated and non-educated. Because us educated people didn't necessarily go to college, and our richest people in America did not go to college. And so we shouldn't use that terminology to look down at somebody. Always think that you're educated and look for the good part of everybody.
So I hear you. I hear you. I really do, and I agree. Being a braver angel, it takes a lot of courage to be able to stand up and to share your feelings and to be able to say, I want us to be in America. When we have our feelings, what's so important with Braver Angels is that when we are done with our view, that we are then willing to pivot and say, okay, how do you feel about it? What do you think about it? So the beauty is starting that conversation and recognizing that we don't only have to talk about what the media is talking about. We can talk about what we want to discuss in our own communities. We're here in the Free Press building tonight. Our local media wants us to be able to bring all of our views to the issues. I mean, they are our sponsors tonight. They want to support this kind of rich community conversation. So please don't be fooled into thinking that I'm just about butterflies and hope and happiness tonight. The idea of being honest with each other, that means we're going to naturally disagree. And I'm here to say that's good, because that's when we prompt each other to see something a little bit differently. Now, I may not fully agree with what you're saying, but, oh gosh, maybe I can at least understand where you're coming from. And then maybe I might just be creative enough to come up with a new way that might help to address the issue in a way that hasn't been tried before. We get so stuck in the fact that we think that nobody will change. Nothing will change. We are in our corners. That's it. We're done. No, we're not done, because I have children. You have children. We are here to actually build a community, not just for us, for the people who we're bringing up, that we want to set the model for. Braver Angels can help enable you to feel powerful in engaging in that conversation. Of course, we're going to disagree, but don't be scared of the disagreement. Embrace the disagreement with curiosity. What is it that I might learn from you? Is there a piece of something that I haven't heard yet that is going to help me understand a little bit better?
Are you aware of other organizations doing similar work to yours? And if so, does your organization work in any way nationally with those? It seems to me that have cropped up a number of organizations that have a similar mission to Braver Angels. Obviously, polarization is a serious issue, and people have tried to address it in a lot of ways. So could you speak to that a bit?
There are definitely other organizations. Many of these organizations have been rooted in church communities. So off the top of my head right now, I'm not going to be able to tell you any of them. But yes, they do exist. They do exist. And the beauty is that we're not in competition. We are all together. We want to reinforce the work that's being done. So if you learn skills in one area, bring it to a different sphere of your life. If you're talking about something like this in your church community, your religious community, then bring it to your friendships or your local bowling or your teams, or maybe the people that you work with. So yes, there are multiple organizations. We are one of many. And I encourage all of us to reach out in the ways that we can, that we're most comfortable.
I am wondering if you could share the people that get involved with Braver Angels. Are there more progressives than conservatives that get involved, or are there more conservatives than progressives that get involved?
So I think that the response is yes. In a heavily red area of the United States, there might tend to be more participation in individuals who lean red. In Minnesota, I'll just be honest, we tend to have more participation of people who lean blue. And you know what? That's actually a problem. We want to try to bridge and build so that our community is rich with people on both sides, because that is the best way that we'll learn moving forward. But there's a reason why sometimes individuals have chosen to not participate. I remember the analogy I gave you with the hot potato. A lot of people are really nervous that if they come to something like this, somebody's going to try to shove a different set of views down their throat. None of us want that. Nobody wants to be left holding that hot potato. And a lot of us don't necessarily feel comfortable to openly disagree or to actually manage all of the emotions that are going on in our hearts, in our minds, that overwhelm us when we really feel threatened or we're fearful of something or when we're really upset by an outcome. So there's a lot going on here. I'm not trying to candy coat any of it. But we are hard-working individuals. I always have hope, and I think that it's important that we try. There's a comment in the back.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for being here. We sure appreciate it. Very interesting. Your screen has depolarizing the United States. What has caused the polarization, say, over the last few decades? You had a screen that showed 1960 to the current period. Are there some causative factors?
There are, and that's like a whole nother lecture series. You know what? I'm not really prepared to go very deep into those waters tonight. And part of that is because I want to be honest with you. I have my own views. And when I stand up here as a braver angel, I'm nonpartisan. I don't want you to feel that I'm only talking to half the room. There are definitely lots of arguments for why the polarization has occurred. And I'm sorry, I'm not chickening out, but I'm going to honestly say that I'm not prepared to talk about them in a way that I have been able to neutralize my own position and feelings. But we are a room full of intelligent people with lots of lived experience, and I'm not the only one that gets to hold the mic. So if there are others who want to speak up, I'm opening the floor.
I'm representing the youth, and I think that one thing that's really changed is there's like a greater amount of media outlets and like media to consume. So you're more likely to find something that like you like agree with very well, like kind of like a confirmation bias. And I think with social media and kind of the easy spread of misinformation and stuff, anybody can find people that agree with them anywhere because you're connected to everybody, like in the world. So I think a lot of people who might not necessarily be extremely to one side consume media that's directed to people like on one side, and then the media can be exaggerated because of course there's like reasons that they want to get clicks and engagement and stuff because people profit from that, and then it's just kind of what sells.
Well, no, she said it exactly right. No, she was perfect.
Other questions?
What are the ground rules when you come into a workshop to keep a safe space?
There are ground rules. That's an awesome question. So every single workshop, we start out with an agenda and a set of ground rules. And I can say that I have not yet experienced somebody who has broken those ground rules. So the ground rules are basically the slides that I was showing you earlier. We call it the braver way. Yep, I went by them. Yeah, these pledges. We try to understand each other's side and point of view. I mean, these pledges, this is what we call the braver way. So this is what we bring to every single workshop that we design. And that's why it's really important that as a moderator or as an ambassador of the organization, that I'm really careful. And I respect the fact and I acknowledge that not everybody in this room agrees with my perspective. So that's why we need to try and make sure that we hold to these ground rules. And honestly, in the past 2 months, I've done a number of these talks. And I've done the depolarizing from within. I've done the skills for disagreeing better, even the family and politics. I've done these ambassador, like I'm doing tonight, the ambassador, like informational talks. I have yet to meet an individual that doesn't want to embrace this work. Now, I didn't say that they all agree with me, because of course we don't, but that's okay. So the ground rules are established. We use the very same ground rules for every workshop. And there may be times when we need to kind of redirect and pull people back onto like the specific task. But I have found that people are very respectful of them.
I'm Horton. See, to me, this wouldn't work. It only works, I think, if people agree on certain facts. We know there's parts of this country that disagree on facts. One fact being, for instance, the results of the 2020 presidential election. And another fact is climate change. So when you have people who look at different things and look at don't agree on the facts, then how do you find common ground there?
I love that you brought that point up. Thank you for bringing up that point. What Braver Angels does, and this really helps me to clarify, what Braver Angels does is it gives each of you the skills to work through that conversation. But we are not about that conversation. We are not about trying to have you argue one way or the other. But what we want to do is reassure you that you as individuals can engage that conversation and do so constructively. Now, let's be really honest. It's not going to happen the first time you try to do this with your brother-in-law or with, your neighbor that you're always kind of bickering or know that you really disagree with. What we reinforce is establishing the relational space that will allow you to try and learn from each other. So, for example, okay, this could go a number of ways. But with climate change, maybe what I would do is I would focus on asking you kinds of questions, not why do you believe that way or why don't you believe that way? Because that really makes us defensive. Instead, I would encourage you in a conversation. I would say, how have you arrived at the way that you believe? And what might you be most fearful about in regards to our climate and what might be happening with our climate? And how might we be able to actually figure out, is there a place that we can come to where we can talk about our climate and what we're both concerned about regarding our climate? And if we can find that common ground, we've just opened up the opportunity for a whole bunch more conversation to happen. So I agree with you that we do not see things the same way. But if all we do is focus on what we disagree on, we don't get anywhere. When we actually try to say, oh, how did you arrive there? What motivates your fear? How has that been experienced in your life? Because none of us have the same lived experience. None of us were raised by exactly the same set of circumstances. So when we can recognize that in each other, that maybe we each have our own personal story for why we do hold the positions that we do, that's when we can start finding common ground. And that's the safe space. So trust me, the kind of process that we encourage you, we've labeled it an acronym, LAP. Listen, acknowledge, pivot, and perspective. A lot of times it's a metaphor in there. We have to make a lot of laps in conversation to come back and to really make ground. But the beauty is that once you see the process, that, okay, I've tried to listen and I've tried to acknowledge today, and you know what? You're kind of ornery and we're not getting anywhere, so I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and maybe I'll come back and maybe we can try this again tomorrow. Or the next time that we're at church together. Or the next time we're both outside. So every time we can show the other person that we have the willingness to try to listen and acknowledge where they're at, that is so affirming and powerful. Now, there are individuals in our lives, maybe you're just not going to be able to go there with them. That might be your reality. But I have faith. I have hope. I really think that if we can try to find that space of common ground, even as little as it might be, that's where we build. That's where we begin to have more conversation.
Just hang on. We need the mic for the recording.
If you were having a meeting there, how would you deal with abortion and in a way that's going to be positive and productive?
That's a great question, and I'm going to address it in the very same way that we address climate. Because what I'm going to suggest to you is that at a Braver Angels workshop, we are not about debating different stances related to abortion. What we are about is encouraging you to think about, how can I ask questions of this person so that I understand what motivates the way that they feel? How have they come about to that? What has been their life experience? What influence have they had in their life that has prompted them to feel the way they do about this topic? Our personal stories, they're so powerful. Maybe with an individual that you might be talking about that topic with, you might realize that they have been very negatively affected in a way that you could never understand just by looking at them. And suddenly that allows you a spark of empathy to try to understand, gosh, maybe that's why they feel that way. So Braver Angels is not about, unless you're at one of the specific, like common ground or debate type of events, Braver Angels is not about the topics as much as we are about helping you to feel, I've got a semi-structure. I know how to enter into a conversation. I know how to listen, acknowledge, and when it doesn't go well, I know how to exit. Because sometimes instead of taking another lap around the track, today we might have to just get off for today. And we might have to come back at another time. So it's not about, and I'm not trying to sidestep. It's not that that's not an important topic. I agree with you, it is. But to sit down and talk with somebody about it, to just talk about, why do you feel this way? I can't believe you feel that way. That's that arc that I showed you. That's immediately assuming that you're going to start the conversation on the far side, where it was all about the hate and the disdain and like I do not see you as human. But when we start on the other side, where we're trying to go, wow, I'm not sure I understand what prompts you to hold the position you do. Could you maybe explain a little bit to me about why that's so important to you? And then once you've given them that opportunity, you've listened, you've acknowledged, then you pivot. And this is such an important part of what Bill Doherty and Braver Angels works on. That pivot is a moment where you go, Can I tell you what I've been thinking about? It's a moment of acknowledgement with the other person, because if they're not going to agree, they're like, no, I don't care what you think. Okay, that just signaled my exit. I'm going to have to come around the lap a different day or a different time. But in that conversation, though, when you can sit down and you can listen, acknowledge, and then you say, wow, I hear you. I understand so much better why that's important to you. Can I tell you what I'm thinking about? Can I tell you how that topic impacts me? And maybe what I'm fearful of, or what I feel I need to really work at protecting. It's the opening the space for that conversation to happen. That's what we're trying to tell you in Braver Angels. Because it's going to take all of us to solve the problems. It's going to take all of our creativity. It's going to take all of our perspective and understanding. And it is not going to be easy. But I tell you what, I'm ready and I'm so much more willing to be a part of those conversations than I am willing to not look at my neighbor in the grocery store or refuse to talk to one of my family members at Thanksgiving. Folks, we got a lot of power. We have so much opportunity. It's kind of scary. Opening up a conversation that might be very riddled with so much emotion and so much of a backstory. But that just means that there's more opportunity for something different and positive to happen. I don't suggest that you keep going back to an individual who refuses to engage with you. This is not about trying to reinforce that you talk with somebody who might be abusive or aggressive or demoralizing. That's not what this is about. No. But it is about opening a space. I am one of the Braver Angels moderators. I work here in Mankato. I actually live up in the cities now. My family and I, we used to live down here in Mankato. But I'm down here every single week. In the cities, I was given 1 to 2 Braver Angel workshops a week for the 2 months before the election. There is an alliance in Rochester. There are people working on this in Owatonna. I had Braver Angels volunteers come down this summer in July, and we talked with the Rotary Club. It just takes a couple of us to go, well, yeah, I could invite a person to come and talk to my group. Maybe there's something that we could learn. This isn't just a blue or a red issue. We all got to be a part of it. We all have responsibility for it. But that means that we all get to be part of the solution to making it better. I just find that absolutely enticing and so powerful. It makes me feel good when the news, no offense to our amazing professionals here, but when the news at times can be really overwhelming. But I got kids. I got kids. And I'm going to do everything I can for them. Are there any more questions tonight? Would anybody else like to make a comment?
Hi, I appreciate coming here tonight and hearing you. I was pretty skeptical. I've had anxiety throughout, I would say, the whole presentation and even listening to people. I've really wanted to stay home and not go into any of the spaces that I usually have gone in and felt very joyful and happy in. I've thought about getting up and leaving a few times through the meeting, grab my phone and my keys. I just don't feel, I feel it's so personal. I don't feel it's political necessarily. I feel that it's humanity issues, and I feel like a personal hit because many things that happened in the election were part of my life in the past with things that were character. I struggle with even being able to know what to say, except I will say that by sitting in this room and forcing myself to sit through it, I feel a little bit softened, or maybe a little crack at the feeling of like that I can find hope again as well, because I have lost that in the last couple of weeks, and I feel close to tears at all times, and I feel safest at home and with people that I know that I'm aligned with. And I never felt like that before. I never cared about anybody's political stance in a decade ago. And I'd really prefer it to not be that way, except I need to be a voice for my child as well. And I need to be a voice for certain family members and friends that it fit some of the groups that fit into Project 25. I don't know what to say, except I'm heartbroken, and I'm thankful to be in a space and share this space that's safe. And I think that what you're doing is good. It seems a little too good to be true. Like, it seems like a little bit of rainbows and butterflies, but I've never been against those things. I mean, I'm hopeful, and I appreciate the chat tonight because I really wanted to leave a lot, and I'm glad that I stayed.
Thank you. Thank you for staying. It's that bravery of staying. It's that getting over the curb and actually just listening for a few more minutes, Every time we try to do that, a little bit more, the crack of hope, you're creating a space for something better to happen. You're right, it's not going to be all butterflies. Absolutely not. We are going to disagree. We are going to have to figure out how to understand those disagreements at a very basic level about what motivates us, what hopes do we have, what fears do we have. But please don't forget that as unique and beautifully diverse we can be, we have a common humanity. We have a common humanity. We really do have so much more in common than what we do have different. We just need to be able to crack that a little bit wider so that we can see into each other a little bit more, because we all want that humanity. And we don't want anybody in our community to feel scared. Thanks for sharing.
Okay, I think we're about at our time. Why don't we give Kristen a hand? Thank you all for coming so much. It's been this is exactly the kind of thing we'd like to do and engage with you. The Free Press, give us ideas for these presentations. We're always wanting to hear from you. And with that, I'll thank you and have a good night.
If anybody is interested, I have some business cards for Braver Angels if you'd like to contact me so that you can reach out, whatever questions you have. If you're thinking, hey, maybe I could have a workshop in my organization, I'm here to be that representative to connect you and to work with you. So I'll get my cards out and I'll put them on that table back there. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time.